Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We will begin by speaking about the situation in Palestine.
Yeah. So, Sadia, do you want to give a little overview of the situation in Palestine?
I mean, a lot of people already know what's happening. I guess what we want to speak about today is these, like, how do you encourage us as Muslims? What are some things we can do to help the people there? Are there things we can do?
Yeah, so there are lots of things that we should do, and these are things we should do regularly rather than one-offs. So, for example, of course we should make dua, of course we should support the people there financially, support them economically. Nowadays, alhamdulillah, there are a lot of initiatives where you purchase dates, for example, and other products to help the Palestinian brothers and sisters. As well as that, socially and politically, you need to be involved. You can't just take a back seat and then complain when things go wrong. Alhamdulillah, we regularly have people launching petitions, etc., trying to engage in activism. So it only takes a minute or two. You should engage in this kind of thing. It is important to also put a good deal of pressure, social, political pressure, on Muslim leaders. We do tend to focus, obviously we live in the West, so the local leaders here are not Muslims, but we do tend to focus on them even more than the Muslim leaders. The first responsibility is on Muslim leaders. They're the ones who are responsible. The Muslims are brothers and sisters, so there should be a lot of pressure put on Muslim leaders to do something, people in authority. But yes, also with non-Muslim leaders, they should be spoken to. The media bias and hypocrisy should be raised regularly. Essentially, a lot of what's going on already, alhamdulillah, should be supported. But when people just take a back seat, and then suddenly they realize, oh, something that was possible before is no longer possible, they have to look at themselves. For example, today the petition I saw was about the government trying to make it difficult to boycott Israeli products, for example. If something like that goes through and you're no longer able to boycott them, which is incredibly important economically and socially, even somewhat politically, it has its impact. But if they just silently go ahead and do this and then suddenly you're not able to do it, then you do need to look at yourself as well. Why didn't you support it when people were going out of their way, making an effort, introducing a campaign to try to safeguard that right?
Yeah.
And Siddhi, with that, it's really scary that the governments are going to control how we spend our money. Like us as individuals, we, even whether it be the Palestine issue, whether it be the situation in China, wherever you see, we as individuals, we have a right to decide where we want our money to go.
And that's the point, freedom of expression, economic freedom, freedom of speech, it tends to be curtailed whenever especially when you're speaking about the Palestinian issue and the Israeli issue, but it tends to be curtailed whenever the Muslims want to do something, or whenever something is against the Israeli state. So a recent clear example of this was in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody burnt the Quran. What was the response? Freedom of expression. He should be allowed to do so. A week or 2 weeks later, somebody non-Muslim said, I'm going to burn the Torah. What happened?
Yeah,
they stopped him. Yeah, outcry. They stopped him. He wasn't allowed to do it. So the hypocrisy is plain and clear for people to see. But it is important to comment on it. It's important to continuously bring it to the forefront, inshallah, because your average person, be it a Muslim person or a non-Muslim person, when they do see this kind of hypocrisy, it has an impact.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that shift anyway. A lot of hypocrisy on social media and stuff. It's changed. The narrative has changed. People are like, wait, and it's not just on this. There's so many other things, especially about the transgenderism and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All of that narrative has changed.
And often when society tends to go in a particular direction and the state or the government doesn't like it, they will introduce laws to try to control that. And that's what's happening with this particular issue we're speaking about today, the right for us to choose what to do with our money and our economic decisions. So because people have seen the hypocrisy, seen the apartheid there in Palestine, and they want to do something against it, and there is a movement in that direction, what's happening? Propaganda, because it's being called what do they always call it? Anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Just simply choosing to not buy the products of a particular government, anti-Semitism. We don't say that for any other country. You choose not to buy from them because you have legitimate cause not to do so. It's not considered racist. It's not labelled in this manner, but here it is.
Yeah.
And so many, like, the governments do that anyway politically with so many countries. I know they've done that with Zimbabwe and they've crushed the economy there. So it's not something so unheard of. And we know in South Africa it was done, and alhamdulillah it was so successful that the whole regime fell as a result.
It did fall. They're doing it with Russia right now.
Yeah, exactly. Russia's what they are doing. So yeah, it's not something. Anything else you guys want to add?
I just want to, when I went to Palestine, alhamdulillah, I got to speak to a lot of the locals, and what they all mentioned was that, so obviously we asked them, what can we actually do to help you guys? There's not much we can do in the UK. There's only so much like power we have. And the one thing that every single one of them said is, just come and visit. Just come and visit Al-Aqsa. They said that's the only thing that can genuinely make an impact, because Israel really don't want Muslims to visit Al-Aqsa. And the moment that there's less Muslims come, it's easier for them to say, there's more demand for the Jews to go to the Al-Aqsa compound, so now the Jews can have it. And that's why they make the airport experience so bad for you. They make the whole experience as bad as they can to turn you away. But all the Palestinian brothers in Jerusalem all said, please just go and visit. That's the one thing that they genuinely believe will actually help them. They even said, when we went, they said, don't even buy anything from me. Don't come to my shop. Just visit Al-Aqsa. Just visit Al-Aqsa. Even when we were there, we go to the shop. People would bring us to the shop, give us tea, and they would say, like, don't even buy anything from my shop. Just come and speak to me, and just invite people to come. Tell them it's so beautiful. Forget about Israel, how hard they make it. Just come and visit Al-Aqsa. And they said that's the one thing that genuinely believe will actually help them.
SubhanAllah. It's very good advice, actually. MashaAllah. And on that note, I think we should end it. MashaAllah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for the people in Palestine and all those that are being oppressed, and all Muslims that are being oppressed, inshallah.